Hey gang, welcome to the Gill Athletics Connections podcast, where we bring you the stories of track and field coaches from around the world. I am your host, Mike Cunningham, and it is my honor and privilege to bring you the stories of these men and women. This week, I just can't say enough about this interview. I had the wonderful Kebba Tolbert from Harvard University. I've known Kebba for a long time, and I learned a ton in this interview about his growing up in the Bronx and his family, just support that he had with grandparents, grandma and uncles and mom, and just what a wonderful way to grow up, and just to hear his story and how the mentors in his life, from Dan Paffs and Boo Schexnaders and Carla Coffees, and just everything he's done so much in his career up until this point. And the wonderful thing is how he has reached the point where he is now giving back to the track and field community. He is now a mentor to so many coaches from around. We spent a long time together, which I'm so appreciative of his time and attention and energy during this interview. And I guarantee you, we will do a part two. We didn't even get close to learning more about this fascinating young man and what he does in the sport of track and field. So please give it up and help me welcome the great and powerful Kebba Tolbert. So Kebba, we were talking about really the influencers that you've had in your life. You've coached, how long have you coached now?
Really since 88, but officially since 94.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll want to explore that then.
Okay.
Officially since 94.
Right.
So a long time, 20 plus, going on 30
right.
years. You look great for, you must have started at 10 years old, Kebba. But what's really interesting about you, and you and I have known each other for quite a long
right.
time. I think we met through the coaching education side
of Colorado Springs?
No, I didn't go to Colorado Springs. Boise was my first one, yeah. So maybe there.
Gotcha.
Through jumps with Boo, which I still say is the number one thing I ever did for my career in life, to be real honest with you. And so Boo fits nicely into this. You're one of these, and you're going to deny this because I know your humility, Boo type people. Like, you teach a lot of people, but you have been taught by a lot of people. Maybe explain the role of some of the mentors you've had and what they've meant to you.
Yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to have some good people that were willing to take time and energy and invest in me as a coach. You know, as a person, but as in the coaching side especially, there's been a few people. One is a guy named Robert Taylor. He's from the Bronx, from Co-op City. He lives in Georgia now. But his daughter was Monifa Taylor, or she is Monifa Taylor, and she was a year older than me.
Okay.
He ran a track club called the Zodiac's Track Club, and it was all girls.
So did you grow up in the Bronx?
I grew up in the Bronx, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was in Rochester, then we moved to the Bronx when I was a little bit older. But he had a club called the Zodiac's Track Club. It was all girls, and so my brother and I couldn't join. But I used to sit, and Monifa was the top hurdler in the country.
She was the stud,
age
right.
group, and then one of the top high schoolers. She went to Florida. Won an NCAA title, got fourth in Olympic trials, lots of things.
Yeah.
So it's a good friend of mine, but I was able to watch them from close up.
Okay.
And I always wanted to be in their club, and I couldn't. My brother and I couldn't, but I used to ask them for advice. I'd read articles. I'd say, well, how can we do in this workout? I used to just sit and watch the workouts after our school practice.
But was that unique to have an all-girls club back then?
Not in New York. I mean, probably a third of the clubs were all girls. So maybe some other were all boys, and most of them were co-ed, but there were a lot of all girls clubs back then.
That is one culture. You know me well enough. I travel around the country, 365 days a year. But the New York and boroughs and suburbs, I know nothing. I've never been there.
Got you.
I didn't know you were from there.
Yeah.
I was going to say I don't even know anybody from there.
Wow.
Maybe I know a lot of people and just don't realize that. It just strikes me odd back in that time that it would be an all-female.
Yeah, there were lots of them.
Interesting.
So I used to watch him, and then I started writing for our school newspaper and the local newspaper, and so I read articles about the club and about her, and so I got to interview her and interview him and get to know them even more. And then he started to trust me, and he knew that I was in the training, so he'd give me articles to read and let me come and watch videos of stuff like Speed Dynamics when it first came out. Come on, late 80s. I'd sit and watch and ask questions.
Speed Dynamics.
And that's how I really got. So because I couldn't join their club, and the club that we joined was about an hour and 20 minutes on the subway. We didn't go every day. So I'd coach my brother. That's how I started coaching in 88.
Wow. Oh, so unofficially, yeah.
We'd come out the house. Sometimes my mom would let us go. Sometimes we'd sneak out at night and go to the track. And I started coaching him. He was a long jumper.
Your high school?
I was in high school. He's 4 years younger than me. So
okay.
This is like my junior, going into my junior year. So he was like, 13, 14. He was in the youth age group.
And were you doing track?
I was doing track as well.
What events?
100, 200,
yeah.
4x1, 4x4, 400. Right. Okay. So I started coaching him, and then kind of just went from there. Then I went to college. And my brother made a couple of youth games teams in Junior Olympics, like the long jump and 200 hurdles.
Yeah, so he's legit.
And stuff like that. So when I got to college, there was a long jumper who was a junior when I was a freshman, and he was good. He was like a conference champion, and my coach knew I was into coaching.
Even as a freshman in college?
So the two things happened, which are both very strange. Coach Westcott, so that was Mr. Taylor.
Right.
And I got started with that. But Coach Westcott, my college coach at Colby, he gave me the key to his office, like the first month of my freshman year. And so for 4 years, I could go in and watch videos and read books and read articles.
Wow.
And look through workouts. And there was my coach was also the head cross country coach. Huh. And so he'd give us stuff to do in the fall. He'd see some of it, but most of it was on our own. Mm-hmm. And when I got there, the guy was like, yeah, I'm a pretty good long jumper, but I fall a lot, and Coach Westcott can't always watch me because he's busy with this group or that group. Mm-hmm. Not in any kind of disrespectful way, just like,
right. Small
D3,
staff,
small,
lots of kids.
So me being young and arrogant and stupid, said, oh, well, I'll ask Coach Westcott if I can work with you. I coached my brother in the long jump, and he was pretty good, and I worked with some of our jumpers in high school.
And you were an athlete on the team?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he said yes. And so I'd work with him maybe once a week on specific long jump stuff, and we worked on having check marks that I got from Tom to Les articles, and I had the Omni book by Doherty.
Yeah.
So I was going through those things and applying it to my brother, and then applying it to Tom Capozza, who was a jumper. And so that's how I started coaching. Then, in addition to having the key, because my head coach at Kobe, he was their faculty because they taught.
Okay.
So anytime something new came out, Track and Field News would have new books and new videos.
Right.
He could order it through the library for me because you could do that as faculty. So I'd get new stuff and I'd go to the library and watch it and read it. Like Bumper came out with a book that I wanted.
Right.
It was like $60. I didn't have $60.
Right.
He would order it and then read the library 2 weeks later, and I could go read it.
Wow,
and
what a
so
resource.
That happened, and I had a good coach, individual sprint coach, Coach Brown. He was a football coach in the fall, track and winter in spring.
That's why he wasn't with you in the fall.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he had ran at Brown, and he was a school record holder. His wife worked in admissions. They got a job at Oberlin after my sophomore year, so he left, and we got a new guy from who didn't have a lot of experience. And so I started writing my own training cycles, and I would run it by my head coach, talk to the event coach, and they would make small tweaks. But basically, for my junior and senior year, I wrote my own training, and I'd write some of the training for some of the group. I'm not saying I did it all right, but that's how I got started.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't the official coach. I didn't write everyone's workouts, but I wrote most of my workouts, and I'd write a cycle. I'd sit and talk with the coach. He'd make some adjustments, and that's what I would do.
What do you think it is about you, Kebba, that someone would trust you after a month? Sometimes you hear similar stories about a senior, or one of your teammates here, Brenner, got injured after a sophomore year and started kind of going to coach. You hear about that.
Right.
I've never heard of
it's crazy.
Month freshman coming in and having access like that.
Yeah, I think he saw that I was into it and I was serious about it, and I think that was just his way of being really encouraging. And I would sit in his office and say, hey, Coach, I read this. Can you explain that? Or this is biomechanical concept. I don't understand it. Can you explain it to me? And he would sit, and he's very patient. And so...
And what was your major? What were you?
I was a philosophy major. Yeah, I was a philosophy major. So really,
I thought you were going to say biomechanics or something.
No, I really was trying to decide whether I'm going to go and get a PhD in philosophy and teach or go into coaching. And the main reason I ended up picking coaching was because it was a 2-year program versus 7 years for a PhD. And I was like, I can't be broke for 7 years. But to this day, I still feel like I'm a philosopher coach, and I read a lot of philosophy. I feel like philosophy is kind of a way of living to me. And so I kind of have the best of both worlds in that regard.
So you got an undergrad in philosophy. You graduated from Colby.
Yeah. Then I went to Smith College.
Which is in
Northampton, Mass.
Northampton,
Yeah, the undergraduate is all women. The
Yeah.
grad schools are
I was
slightly
about to say,
co-ed.
I've been there, and I thought it was a women's school.
The grad schools are slightly co-ed. So
Gotcha.
we had 16 people in our exercise and sports studies program. There were 2 men. And so I did that for 2 years under Carla Coffey. When I got there,
that's right.
I coached the women's sprints, the women's hurdles, the horizontal jumps there in the relays. And so, again, another situation where stepped in, their 4x1 was returning. They finished second in the country the year before.
Oh.
And she turned it over to me. So, and I was like, Seagrave this and Seagrave that, and taking stuff from Tony Wells, and but because Way Smith is, it's a part of a 5-college system with UMass and Hampshire and Holyoke.
Okay.
And Smith had this really cool science library where they had like biomechanics reports and sections like that. Between that, and I would go over to UMass. You take the bus over, the shuttle, and they had all the old NCSAs. And so back in those days, back in like the 80s and 90s, they'd have like round tables with Dan Paff and Lawrence Seagrave and Remy Korshemny and people like that, and Don Chu. And so I could, because of that, I could take them out, I could copy them, and then take them back. And the library at Smith had all of the old Soviet sports reviews, so I could take those out, take them out, and copy them as well. And so I had all those, and I would read, and I would go to that, and I would go to seminars, and that's how I got started.
I'm surprised. This doesn't surprise me. You're always have been, in my mind, a very academic, cerebral type of coach, less relying on the rah-rah yelling and more on the, hey, here's the cues and here's how to improve on the next attempt or the next race. So it does surprise me that you weren't a biomechanics major and also got a master's in a PhD even. I would not have been shocked if you had told me that you started that. Where did that, I'm going to call it love of learning, where did it come from? Were your parents teachers or?
It probably came from my mom, my grandmother, and my uncles. So it's funny, like in my family, I'll tell you 2 things. One is my grandmother passed a few years ago, but my grandmother, my Uncle Frank, and my mother, they all have at least 2, they have 2 master's degrees. I only have 1. So I'm kind of like the black sheep of the family.
Wait a minute, yeah, right. Yeah. You're the less educated, formally educated.
Yes, certainly.
Holy
Easily.
cow.
And my grandma, so in 8th grade, I went to school in Manhattan. I used to go from the Bronx to Manhattan, catch a train every day. I went to the junior high school. My mother had gone to, because they had a program to send kids to boarding school. And my mother had gone to Norfolk Herman, my uncle had gone to Berkshire, and it was to send my
Those are boarding schools?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I went, and then I got into Andover to Phillips Academy, which is nearby.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
And so that's where I went. Really, really good boarding school.
Yeah,
very fortunate.
Like I've heard of that. Like it's kind of...
It's super elite.
Yeah, right. And you got into that school.
I got into that school.
And that's where you went.
That's where I went. That's where I started high school. Wow. And so 8th grade, 2 months before graduation, maybe 3 months, the report cards come out, and I'd already gotten in, and I was excited, and I was on the math. I was on like Manhattan Borough math team. I was like on the honor roll for this. I was into that kind of stuff.
Right.
My report comes out, and it was pretty good. I was ranked number 3 in my school, and whatever. And I said, oh, this is pretty good. Got a couple B's. Is that the best you can do? Like, yeah, I'm doing pretty good, Grandma. I'm feeling myself. I got like the top boarding school in the country.
Right.
And she's like, well, my grandmother was running a daycare center in Spanish Harlem that she'd been running for 20 years. I used to go there when I was little. She had already a master's degree. She's working on her second. She's going on weekends from New York to Maryland down to Bowie State University on weekends to take classes. And she has a 4.0. She goes, well, I have a 4.0 and I'm doing this. So if I can do it, you can do it too, right? And it's like, yes, Grandma. There's no it wasn't a question. It was just like, yes. So that's the kind of person she was and the influence she had on me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you 2 other quick stories. When I was younger, I thought I wanted to be a psychologist. Maybe when I was 10 or 11. I don't know. I just was interested. She just got me a subscription to Psychology Today. When she lived in New York, this is when we lived in Rochester. And I probably couldn't understand the articles, but it was just anything involving education, she was going to support.
Yeah.
If you were doing well in school, you could almost ask for anything.
In the world,
I got a new Atari or I want shoes. Like if you're doing well in school, she was behind you 300% because for her, growing up where she came from really poor, African American woman from the South. Like education's the way to the future.
You said from the South. Did she grow up there and move up?
She grew up and then moved up to New York when she got married and stuff.
Yeah, okay.
But so that's that.
That was her key out of poverty.
And for our family.
And for the family, right.
And so if you're doing well in school, you were good.
Yeah.
My first year at Smith, I had gone from Kobe, where I was the captain of the track team, where I was the president of the Black and Hispanic Student Organization, and I was a student government cultural chair my senior year.
Wow.
And so, Kobe at that time had 1,700 students. There were 32 black students. There were 3 black males in my graduating class. So,
Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone knew who I was just because there's not that many of us.
Right.
I'm not, so I go from that to Smith, where the undergraduates are all female. I'm only one of 2 males in my cohort of the Exercise and Sports Studies program. Mm-hmm. I'm in Northampton. I'm a grad student and I'm broke. Mm-hmm. And I'm studying the science stuff that I had no background in. Mm-hmm. Like I hadn't taken biomechanics, hadn't taken exercise physiology, had never done motor learning. That stuff was really hard for me. I didn't enjoy it at first. So at the end of my first year, and I was also heartbroken over this girl I had dated and that didn't work out in college. So end of my first year, I was like, this is for the birds. I'm going to drop out. Okay. And so I make up my mind. I'm like, yeah, I've had it. And the coaching was going fine, but I was just not happy. So I get up one morning in the summer and I'm going to go to the registrar's office, the dean's office, let them know, and I'm gonna withdraw. I get about 100 feet from my door, maybe 200 feet. I'm like, well, if I do that, I've got to call my grandmother.
I was going to say, what
I'm
grandma
dropping out of grad school.
Yeah.
So that's probably not going to go over well. I turn around, walk back to my apartment. So I got to figure this out, and that was that. And then next year,
on the walk over.
Yeah, I was just like, she's not going to have it.
Voice. Yeah.
So next year,
good for her.
I got a teaching. They offered me a teaching job, so I had a little more money. It wasn't a lot. It was $1,000 a semester, but that's a lot back then. Yeah. And I started dating someone, and so just everything got a little better, and it was perfectly fine. And she didn't know that till years later. I told her years later. It's like, I was going to drop out, and I was walking down the street, and I was like, I had to call you and tell you. I was like, I probably can't do that, so figure it out.
What did she say when you told her?
She laughed. She said, I'm glad you stayed. So
now that is true influence right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
But her and my mother has 2 master's degrees. She's an ancient Near Eastern studies scholar.
Ancient
Near Eastern. So she has she's a minister. My other uncle is a minister. He has 2 master's degrees from Columbia. He was a dean of a college at Hofstra University. I used to go out in the summers and spend time with him. So, and my other uncle, who doesn't have a college degree, is like, if I would get in trouble, if you got in trouble at school in my house, like the teacher calls and said, hey, Kebba was talking a lot in class, or you went to parent-teacher night, and they said, Kebba's doing really well, we think he could do even better. Or the teacher says you're not trying hard enough. Right. Teacher says you're not putting, I'm like, Mom, I got all, man, it was like, there was no escape. And see this building right now? This is where my apartment was. Okay. Right there, about that far, is where my uncle's apartment was. Okay. Across the river was where my other uncle's apartment was, and maybe where the track is, where I had another uncle.
All right, so people can't see, you are pointing literally at
5-10-minute walks.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah.
And so if a teacher said Kebba's talking too much in class, or Kebba was late, it was you get the lecture from my mother, and she would yell. Then I get a phone call from my grandmother, Kebba, can you come over? And it's not like you can say no. So I go over, and baby, education's important. You got to do a little better. Okay. Next day, my uncle comes. Brother, come over. Come over. And there's this program called Eyes on the Prize. Okay. It's a civil rights program about what black people went through to get to where we are now. Not that everything's perfect, but we've made lots of progress. Sure. We can go to school, we can vote, we can. Yeah. So about the struggles that they went through for that. And he would sit me down and he put on some version of Eyes on the Prize. He might go in the back room and clean up or make a phone call, but it's like a 15-hour program. He would just pick some segment. I might have to watch. I'd sit and watch an hour. And he would come back and say, now you see why you need to be more serious about your school. Or you see the sacrifices people made so that you can have these opportunities. And there wasn't much you could say. He's like, well, you going to do better? Yes, Uncle Frank.
Right, what pushback are you giving for that? Right.
Then you get a call the next day from my Uncle Frank. Brother, I need you to come over. Hey, how come you're not trying hard in school? Uncle Frank, I am. But the teacher's saying you're not. You're not doing your best. Uncle Frank, I'm trying. Well, I think you can do better. You got to put forth more effort. We can do better than this. I expect more from you. Yes, Uncle Frank. And my Uncle Frank, on his wall, pictures of Malcolm X, pictures of Frederick Douglass, Fannie Lou Hamer, Harriet Tubman, all those kind of things are around his house. Black culture, black history, black love. And that was the conversation. It was a one-way conversation with the yes, I understand, I'll do better. So that's where I got it from.
Wow. Yeah. What support you had there.
Yeah.
I mean, you would have had to have tried to fail.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, they were going to be there to make sure that if you were going to fail, it wasn't going to be because they weren't going to be derelict in their duty to lead you and be responsible.
So from there, boarding school, Andover.
Yeah.
I'm pretty fast. Like I have the freshman record in the 50 yard there.
That tells you how old you are, by the way.
I know.
It's 50 yard.
And then my second year, I was the fastest person in the league. And I was only running like 23.2 and like 11.2 or something like that. But I got in trouble my first year. Got in trouble again my second year. So then I withdraw. I had to leave. So I go back to New York. And my mom is hot.
Yeah.
Like for 2 years straight, I had to make da-da-da. And if I look the wrong way, see, that's your problem. That's why you got kicked out of Andover.
That's your problem.
Yeah, like you know,
I sneezed, Ma. It's like, come on.
Like if my socks are on the floor in the wrong corner, see,
that's
your
why.
problem. Man, to the point of where this is how bad it was. At graduation night, again at Truman High School, I ended up writing for the paper, editor, on the track team, doing all these things. Get into Kobe, got recruited by Princeton, got recruited by Brown, good schools. I figured shit out.
Right.
Sorry,
yeah, right.
I figured things out, but. My mom said something to me in the car after graduation on the way to dinner. And I must have said something back, and she didn't like it. And she was like, see, that's your problem. And my uncle, my uncle is a person where you're going to respect your parents. Like, there's no, you're going to respect your parents. He stepped in, he's in the car, he goes, Regina, the boy graduated. He's going to college. You might want to let that go. I was like, wow, I'm okay now. I've been freed. My mom was out of love, but I mean? It was just like, that's how she took it, know? Because, I caused some family embarrassment and some family pain.
Yeah.
But at Truman, I get there in the summer of '88, and they have Empire State games, like Mass has Bay State games.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, I'm fast. I was the fastest in New England prep school. I'm going to go make the team.
All right.
Man, so...
It did not go as planned.
I go to the prelims, I run 100, I'm like, I get waxed. People are running like 10.8s and 10.7s and 10.6s in the prelims. I've never seen nothing like that. I run a 200. People are running 22 flat and 21 sixes and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my goodness. Our team at Truman had won the state title in the 4x1 the year before. But I had never seen this kind of running before.
Right.
Man, it was like an eye-opener.
I was going to say, so how did you take that? Because one type of person would see that and be like, oh, I'm not a sprinter and quit.
No,
another person would take it and say, oh, I need to get better.
I got better.
Yeah.
And I made a 4x1 and a 4x4. Our 4x1 had the fastest time in the state up until the city. So the way New York State did the state championships back then is the top relay from each region made it to state meet.
Okay.
In New York, we had the top time, but at the city championship, this boys and girls school beat us. We ran 41.6 and got beat, so we couldn't go to the state.
You don't go to the state championship.
And we had the second best time in the state.
Right.
And next year we ran like 318, 317. We were one of the top 4 teams in the state. Like New York City had like 5 of the top 6 teams and couldn't go. New Rochelle, which was right next door, they went and got second in Mount Vernon, and they're right next door to the Bronx. Right. They could be second and third in the state meet. They weren't, and no disrespect to them, they weren't the top 5 in the state.
Right.
And so it broke our heart. We were like, man, because we had gone to Penny Relays and made the consolation final and got a medal, and we had won the Laos games and things like that.
Right.
And boys and girls, they had this guy named Jimmy Stafford who was like a 20.9, 21 flat guy back then.
Nice.
And he kicked our butt on the relay, and we just couldn't. We had a great anchor. He was a 10.2, 10.3 guy.
Oh, wow.
We just couldn't catch up.
Yeah.
But that was my introduction to real track. In a sense. I mean, not that it wasn't, but this is fast.
Kind of got you out of the bubble that you were in. It's like, oh, there's better people out there.
So I ended up running like 22.4 and like 10.9 and ran 49 in the relay as in high school. Got recruited by Kobe and some other schools. Ended up there. And so that's that bridge of all those things, And so between my senior year in college and my first year at grad school, summer of '94, I was back in New York City working. And Mr. Taylor asked me to be his assistant.
Oh, the club.
Yeah. So I was assistant coach all summer. And
still all girls club?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I travel with them. I go to meets. I'd help out. I don't know how much help I was, really, but I think he knew that I was into it, a young coach, and he just helped me out. And I'd watch and I'd learn and I'd ask questions. And he had a 59-second hurdler in high school. He had another girl who was a youth champion in the triple jump. He had a couple other kids. He had a 206, 207, 800-meter girl in the club. He had a 1370 hurdler. He had a crew.
Yeah.
So I was around that. and getting to watch them and see the workouts he did. He had a couple other kids that were 24.4, 24.6 in the 200, all in this one area.
Yeah.
That's what I was like, oh, wow, okay. And so that's how I got started. That's how I got started.
So you finished out your grad, luckily for you, I think, you finished out your grad work at Smith. You said you got the 4x1 one the year before.
It was second year before.
Second year before. How'd they do?
So we were ranked second my first year. Somebody on the relay and the head coach had a big blow up, and so she decided she wasn't taking the relay to nationals. I was hot, and I love Carla. Like I wouldn't be without Carla. I was like, what? And that was that.
Not the athlete, just the whole team.
She wasn't taking the relay nationals. Like,
wow.
And so that was that.
Man.
So
hey, that's sticking to your guns though. That's,
the next year I had a relay 4x4 make it to nationals and a cut 400 hurdler. But yeah, I mean it was really, I wrote everything, the warm up, the weight training.
Yeah.
And she just turned it over to me.
Your program now at this point.
And when I first got there, she was like, okay, are you going to coach? She said, you're going to coach the sprint and hers. And we had talked about it in the summer. She's like, okay, bring me down some of your workout ideas and all that. So I'm like, okay. And I had gone, the other thing I should say, I know we're kind of weaving in and out. My senior year in college, Lauren Seagrave was putting on this thing called the Elite Sprint Seminar. It was in Vegas. It was a 2-day seminar right around Thanksgiving, maybe right before or after, I can't remember. And I asked my mother for a Christmas gift, holiday gift, can I get a ticket for that? I paid for my registration. A women's head coach went, and my head coach sent our sprints coach there. So we actually roomed together, which I'm sure is an NCAA violation. My head coach died a few years ago, so it's like whatever. Yeah. But he said, if you go, I'll let you room with Coach G. Right. So I mean, that's that kind of support. I don't think he was trying to, that's what he did.
Right.
And so we all went, spent 2 days with about 30 other people, listening to Lauren talk from 9 a.m. till 7 at night.
Yeah.
2 days in a row about sprint training, things like that. Wow. At that seminar, I met Tony Vini.
Yeah.
And he was coaching at Cal State Northridge at the time. And he gave me his card, and he was the women's sprint development coach here.
Right.
So,
for a long time.
Yeah. So when I got to grad school, we had to graduate either a special studies project or a thesis. I did a special studies project, so I edited a book on sprinting and hurdling. And so Tony wrote one of the articles for me. Remy wrote some articles for me. John Miller, who used to be at Notre Dame, and wrote some articles for me. I had some really, Tommy Badon, who I teach with now, he wrote one of the articles for me on applied metrics. Mr. Taylor, I did an interview with him. I had good people. Man, it sold for about 15 years. I probably sold about...
What was this called?
Sprinting and hurdling. Probably Gil used to sell it.
Wow.
I probably sold 2,000 copies.
Nice.
Self-produced, edited, everything.
Yeah.
That was my special studies project.
Wow.
So I was very into the Lauren Seagrave thinking mentality type stuff. That's what kind of directed my training at that point. And so I brought this to Carla, and she's bringing me a training. She's like, well, do you think they need a bigger base and more aerobic stuff? And she was a good coach. But that was, and she was in the speed and power because I know and she had been on numerous teams and committees with TAC and USA Track and Field. And she said, I think you should do some more of this. And I was like, okay. I went back to my apartment. And this is what's weird, because I had a lot of respect for her. I was like, I really don't believe in that. I think I went back and I said, Coach Coffee. And she's, no, call me Carla. And I was like, okay, Carla. I said, I understand what you're saying. This is like 2 hours later, 3 hours later. I said, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I really believe in this. How can I do it this way?
Right.
And she looks at me, she goes, I know all that new stuff and I get it, but she said, you know what, I'm going to let you do it, but they got to be ready to go.
Yeah.
And she let me do it.
Yeah.
And we ran well and did well. But I mean, like, I can't believe I went back to her.
Right.
Because I was terrified.
Sure.
And she said yes, and boom.
Yeah.
So.
Especially at Carla Coffee. I mean, well accomplished back then, well accomplished now.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So that's.
And who were you? You're a grad student.
I was some dude who had no real formal coaching experience, taking her relay in group that had done well and saying, I want to do it this way.
Yeah.
And it worked out.
Huh.
Worked out.
That's awesome. So
it's kind of crazy.
Where was after Smith?
So after Smith, I went and I was the head coach at Iowa Wesleyan.
Is that right? I didn't know that. Yeah. So
when you're looking for jobs as a grad student, I got a couple offers. One was at UMass for like $10,000 and no insurance, And Iowa Wesleyan, one of my college teammates, he was going to grad school at University of Iowa. His wife, who had gone to Kobe as well, she had graduated in 1990. She went to Springfield for grad school, and she was the head track and cross country coach. But she was also teaching a full load there, and it was more than what she was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
The person who was supposed to be the head track coach when she got there became the head football coach right when she got there. So it shifted all her responsibilities.
Right.
So she was like, I cannot do all this next year. So I was the head track coach. She was the head cross country coach. And so you had 3 Kobe people in Mount Pleasant, Iowa.
Yeah.
There. And so that's how I got
nowhere,
there.
Iowa.
Yeah. And so that's how I got to Iowa.
Iowa, but
That's how I got there.
wow.
So I was the head track coach.
And how long were you there?
2 years.
And you were the head coach.
Yeah,
right?
we were bad.
Really?
Like with my relay at Smith made nationals, my fastest person was 64 seconds when I first got there. I was like, oh my gosh, like,
Wow.
it was bad. It was bad. And then Jim Grant at Iowa, he was the head coach then. He had some kids that weren't going to be qualifiers, and he called me up because we were NAIA.
Right.
He sent me some information about kids, and I started making connections in Jamaica. And I got another person from Ivory Coast, and he set it all up, and we got third the next year at nationals.
Wow.
Third indoor and fourth outdoor, and my AD was shocked, and he was like, I can't. He's like, oh, how'd you guys do at nationals? I goes, third. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, we got third. He goes, as a team? I'm like, yeah. And we've been like setting conference records and school records all year. He didn't pay attention.
Right.
And but we got third, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like they were keeping their promises to me about certain things, whether it was scholarships or support.
Yeah.
And he and I at the time didn't get along. He gave me an opportunity, but I also felt like he wasn't respecting what we were doing. So
I think sometimes administration, because I have similar experience when I coached JUCO in Kansas, where they just, oh yeah, you're doing this, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to take care of it, and then when the rubber meets the road and it's time to do it, I think they're very good at saying yes about the dream, and then a little harder when it comes time to actually maybe not give football a bigger increase and give it to you. Yeah, that's so disheartening because you work so hard at doing that.
So I sent out stuff to a bunch of schools. Hey, I'm looking to leave. If there's a possibility. McKendree College had just started their program, and they were like fifth at nationals that same year. And he was like, "Oh shoot, got this guy with And so we started talking early summer, late spring, and I became the associate coach. I had an offer for me to go there or go to Swarthmore as the head coach.
Okay.
And D3 academics similar. And Swarthmore offered me more money. They offered me $32,000, which I thought was a lot of money then. And the AD he had been the head track coach at Amherst, and he had also coached the other guy in our grad program at Smith that had done track. So he was his coach, and so there was that connection. He knew Carla and things like that. And I really, really thought about it, but I thought we could win a national title at McKendree. And when I was there, we won 3, 2 indoor, 1 outdoor, and we were second outdoor. And
that's interesting. So you took the less paying job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it worked out.
Yeah, right. But, a lot of times coaches, as they're going through their, I call it their progression, but different schools, a lot of time it is, that school's going to pay me $5,000 more. Okay, let's go. It's all about that because we get paid so little as compared to some other sports that are out there. So that's interesting. You took that, and so you're at McKendree. And did you become the head coach at McKendree?
No, I was just associate coach.
Okay, and this would have been
98 to 2000.
98 to 2000. That was a little bit earlier than that. Okay, so McKendree. So you went from middle of nowhere, Iowa, to middle of nowhere, Illinois. Okay, what happened after McKendree?
So we were pretty good. I mean, I had a lot of good kids there. Talented people, hardworking kids. I coached the women's sprint hurdles, jumps, multis, horizontal jumps, multis. And I coached the men's sprint hurdles, horizontal jumps. Right. We had won 3 titles, so we were pretty good.
Yeah.
Got a call from Andy Roberts at Syracuse. So basically, what happened was Carol Smith called me.
Okay.
And said, "Hey, Andy's looking for a coach."
Where was Carol at this time?
She was at 2000.
Alabama.
She was at Penn State.
Penn State. Okay.
I think Penn State. And she said, Andy's looking for a jumps multis person. I told him you'd be good. I had him.
Now, how did you know her?
So through Tony Vini. So Tony Vini was a women's sprint co-chair for USATF. So when I was doing my special studies project, he was doing an article. He said, hey, when you get your job, let me know where you're at. So I call him. I say, I want you to be my regional junior development chair. It was a title without much responsibility. I had some things to do, but so because of that, I got to go out to the junior elite camps out at Chula Vista.
Yeah.
And so that's why I met Tony Wells.
Yeah, I was going to say you had to get Tony Wells.
And so Tony V and Tony Wells were there, and I learned a ton from them.
Right.
And I went out for a couple of years, and that's why I met Curtis Taylor, because he'd always have the athletes there. So that's how I met Curtis Taylor in '97 at the junior elite camp. And that's why I met Tony Wells. And so I was there, and because of Tony Wells, I met Carol at some point.
Right.
And
was Tony Wells?
He was her coach.
And Curtis connected at all, or
Tony Wells was one of Curtis's mentors.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And so Tony mentored me as well.
Yeah,
and several other people.
Tony has a
and so
big branch.
That's how I knew Carol.
Awesome.
She talks to Andy Roberts at Syracuse.
Got it.
She goes, I had Andy talk to Dan and Gary too, Dan Paff and Gary Winkler. I knew Dan when I first got to Iowa Wesleyan. When I didn't get much money, I got $18,000 to be head track coach, sports information director, assistant athletic director.
Oh,
those are my titles.
Man.
$18,000, but I had insurance. I had health insurance.
Yeah, that's big.
I said I got to have at least $1,000 in professional development money, and so I went to the NACACTA Congress my first year in Puerto Rico, and it was Dan speaking. It was the one that Victor Lopez runs. It was Dan Paff.
Right.
It was Jerry Clayton.
Oh, wow.
It was Joe Vigil and Dave Woolman from SMU. Those were the 4 speakers over those 2 days. And I
read 4 giants.
Yeah, huge. I'd read some stuff from Dan before, and I learned a ton that weekend. I'm sure now I didn't understand half the stuff he was saying, but it turned on light bulbs, and I'd been out in the Lauren Seagrave kind of stuff, so they had coached together at LSU, lots of similarities. And Dan said, hey, if you ever need anything, not to me, to the audience, give me a call, email, fax. And I took him up on it.
You took it as you are talking
to
me.
And so I had some issues that year, and I had a high jumper, a 5'2" high jumper, and I said, hey, I'm having problems. He goes, send me some video. I'll look at it. And 5'2" made it to the NAIA Nationals back then. Okay. And he sent me back articles and detailed feedback on my 5'2" jumper. Like she was like a 6-foot jumper,
Right.
And I was like, wow, embarrassing rotation and this, that, and the other, and oscillation. Turning pages looking. So
isn't that phenomenal?
Yeah.
That he would do that.
Yeah. The next year when I had a good team, I had a girl that got hurt. She hurt her hamstring. I called him. I said, hey, Dan, I remember you talking about Donovan Bailey in '96 getting hurt before the Olympics and what you did.
Oh, yeah.
And he started talking about neurolymphatic and holding points and pressure points and foot reflexology. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I had taken
a little over my head.
but I had taken kinesiology. So I knew some of the stuff he was talking.
Right.
Monifa Taylor, at that point, was still training, but she was getting her certification in massage.
Oh.
So I called her. I said, "Hey, what does this mean? What is he talking about?" And she starts breaking it down for me. Go get this book. Go get that. So all this stuff comes back together. So I go to the library and I order and I read and I order and I start working on these kids and they run fast again. And okay, so I become a true believer. Wow. So that's how I started to get to know Dan.
Yeah.
At McKendree, they used to have this meet called the Cannon for Me.
Okay.
It was in Indianapolis. Butler hosted it.
Yeah, the NIF Center.
Yeah. And so we went when I was at McKendree and Alabama were going, Texas would go.
Yeah, it used to be huge.
Big.
Yeah.
My kids won the men's 60 and the women's 60. They were good, like 6'3" and like 720 something. And Dan came in the next day because that was a Friday. He got there on Saturday, and he's like, "Oh man, I heard you guys were tearing it up last night. Man, you could have knocked me over." It's like he knew what we did. Like that was like, whoa, Dan Pfaff knows, like what we did. Like it was like that was one of the best compliments I'd ever gotten in my life.
So very similar. When I was at Mississippi State, he had a stud, long, high, maybe triple, three jump guy who did all three really, really well. His guy was favored to win the long jump. He was, I think he might have even been a national champion. My kid wins the long jump at SECs, and his kid gets second, I'm sure. And Dan comes over to me, and sticks his hand out, goes, "Congratulations!" And I was like, "Oh my!"
Right.
Dan Pack congratulating me, that he would even take the second to come say congratulate. I was floored.
Right.
Absolutely one of the best compliments in my career.
Right.
Absolutely, it's just amazing.
And so that's how I ended up at Syracuse.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
and then was there for 3 years. Coached the jumps and multis. Had pretty good success, some school records, a couple nationals.
It's interesting. I was going to ask, how is education playing into your career at this point? But you hit that nail.
So here's the funnier thing. So in 2001, Ron Grigg calls me. because he and I had met at a level 3 in Chicago in '99.
Okay, Ron. Yep.
And he's like, "Hey, Boo and Cliff are looking to reboot the multi-event stuff for Coaches Ed. They're looking for people to kind of do this pilot study course. I suggested you. So he said,
How did Ron know you? Oh, through level 3.
Through level 3,
Yeah,
and we
okay.
just started connecting. He was at
This
Kansas
is
State
01.
and then
okay, I was
JU.
going to say, was this when he's before? Because he went JU, Kansas
Yeah,
State, JU.
right.
I
And so-
met him when he was at Georgia Southern.
No, you're thinking of Todd.
I am thinking of Todd. No, I met him when he was at JU.
Right.
When I was at Troy, we used to go down to Florida.
Right.
That's how I met Ron.
And so he was a Lauren guy, and so we talk, we share information, we email questions to each other back and forth. The two of us, we email Boo and ask him questions. And so he's like, "Yeah, Boo, I think told Boo to have you come out." He said, "Call him." I called Boo. "Yeah, we're doing this reboot of the multi-events curriculum. We're going to bring you out." They fly me out. They put me up. Everything is me. Jim Van Ottingen is there.
Yeah.
John Bauman is there.
Yeah.
Ron is there. A bunch of people. Like this cohort. I don't think Todd was there, but that kind of group.
Right.
And so we do that. And then so Boo's like, "Hey, could you maybe be I'd like to maybe talk to you about being an instructor. Where'd you do your level 2 at?" I go,
Right.
"Well," I said, "I really haven't done my level 2. I said, I just kind of hung out with Dan. I'd go visit Dan. I'd call Gary. I'd hang out with Gary.
Right.
I'd go visit Boo. But I never went to level 2.
Right.
Because level 3s weren't, you could just go.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
So, but I would
That's
go to
right.
the, he goes, "Oh man, you got to go to level 2. You go do it this summer, do the jumps." And then that's what happened. I started teaching a year or two later.
Where was that? Where'd you do your level
I did
2
jumps at Boise.
Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
That's where I did
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That was mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was your first level 2.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you're at level 2 in Boise, taking jumps with Boo, which
Yeah.
I know exactly that class because I was in that class.
Right.
I can't believe that.
That's crazy, right?
That was where I was first introduced to the ability of drawing stick figures from Boo.
It's amazing, right? Right. I mean, legendary.
I wish we could go back and, it's funny, we're in your office and I'm looking up and you've got 2 notebook, Boo training and Boo stuff. I love that. I can't say enough about that man and what he did for my career. I wish we could go back and get a roster of everybody that was in that class. It would be real interesting. Oh, and there's a big one. Month by month, is that what it says? Oh, man. I wish we could get a roster of everybody that was in that. I think we, because I'm sure we're forgetting
Right.
some people that were in there. What's his name's wife who coached at Florida State?
Green Street Thompson's wife.
Yeah.
Jackie.
Jackie.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was in there. I remember her. Oh, man.
Ed Jacoby was in there.
Is that
Yeah.
right? Of course. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I just remember I coached for 10 years total, and that was at the end of my fifth year. The performances of my athletes in the first 5 years of my career compared to the last
Right.
five,
It really makes a difference, yeah.
radically different. Because he's so smart. So let's compare Boo to Dan, and you know both of them real well. I know Dan a little bit.
Okay.
But for me, Boo can teach it to where somebody like me can understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, I haven't been around him enough, and I know he's a good teacher, but whenever I've talked with him, it's just at it's an understandable level.
I think that, they both are huge mentors to me and good friends. Now, it's amazing that we have the relationship that we do. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
Outside of just the track stuff, life stuff, and things like that.
Right.
But with, I think Boo approaches it more of like a high school teacher, even though Dan taught high school as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think he kind of tries to make it so he spent a lot of time teaching high school.
Right.
So I think he kind of has
Right.
that approach to it. Whereas I feel like, and this is just my opinion, I feel like Dan is almost trying to challenge you to learn.
Yeah.
And go out and seek more
Great
information
points.
in a different way. And so they both turn on light bulbs, but I feel like it's different.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it actually makes a lot of sense for my own education level and how I learned that I'll need that guy who teaches down at the ninth grade level, where Dan Paff he's teaching PhD, and it's like, man, I can't even spell PhD. So
He'll say stuff like, "Oh, I never even heard of that, never thought of that."
Right.
I mean, there's stuff I'd go back and rewatch lectures or go through notes, and there's, and Boo too. They both when they teach, if you go back, there's seeds for years to come.
Yeah.
Like, oh shoot. Because where you're at and the problem you have then, later on you're like, oh, I didn't even realize I didn't understand that. And that still
Right.
happens to this day.
it's interesting. You talked about Dan with that 5'2" high jumper. So Boo was that for me when I was at Ball State, where at the end of level 2, he's, hey, if you ever need anything, here's
Right.
and I was like, all right, I'm gonna take that. You're talking to me. I'm taking that up. And
Right.
I'd email him, and always a thoughtful response,
Right.
not just keep doing what you're doing. Hey, have you thought about this?
Right.
I mean, just people like that give back.
Right.
And now you're in that part of your life where you're now continually giving back as
Right.
well. You've been poured into from all these people.
Right.
So what do you do now? Are you teaching USTFCA?
I teach USFCA.
Yeah.
This year I'm teaching jumps, but I've taught sprints and hurdles probably the last 8 or 9 years or so.
You're teaching jumps.
Teaching jumps this year.
Not Boo.
No,
Boo not
Boo
taught
has
for
a
a
prior
while?
commitment.
Okay.
So,
I'd be disappointed if I came and it wasn't Boo.
so yeah, I'm doing jumps this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, between Tony Rini, Tony Wells,
yeah.
Dan and Boo have been huge influences on me. And even when I was younger, Lauren would answer my calls and answer my emails.
Wow.
So I get a reasonable amount of emails, a reasonable amount of calls. I try to get back to most of them. I have an 8-month-old daughter, so things are kind of hectic right now.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
I knew about Malcolm. Malcolm's got to be
He's 11.
11.
He'll be 12 next month.
Man, I tell you, it's so fascinating. We're connected on Facebook. You are a really good father.
Thank
I
you.
can tell you that. Like, it's been shame on me for waiting this long to
No,
tell you
I
that.
mean-
But it does mean a lot to me to look you in the eye. You're so good with him, and I actually. So I have a 9 and a 6.
Mm-hmm.
I actually learn a lot from how you do things with Malcolm, and I see the snippets, right? But you seem to be very varied in what you do with him. Like, you haven't locked him in like only do this, or
No,
like,
no,
oh, you want to explore this?
diverse,
All right, let's
yeah.
go check that out.
Right.
I try to model that with my kids, man. If
Gotcha.
they show an interest, let's go
Thank you.
explore.
One thing for me, I feel like I don't know what he's gonna be. He's into engineering and programming and stuff like that. He thinks he wants to be an engineer. He's 11. Who knows?
Right.
But I feel like I want to try to support him in anything he wants to do that's positive.
Yeah.
I appreciate the compliment of being a good father. It's hard, and I'm saying this because I feel like I fail a lot, and I try to redeem myself and try to I apologize to him when I make mistakes because I want him to know it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
I am not perfect, but I feel like I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
And I didn't have good fathers,
Right.
and so I feel like I'm trying to be the person that they weren't, and not that they were bad people, but I really feel like I'm trying to be the opposite, provide the
Right.
opposite example. And I had good uncles, I had good mothers, good grandmothers, so I have good examples of what adults should be in children's
Absolutely.
lives, and I'm trying to carry that on and help him to put him in a situation where he can do even better for his kids. But
Is he into track at all? I haven't seen any of
he
that.
just, it's funny. When he was younger, he would come to our meets and be excited, and he wasn't into track at all for a while.
Right.
And he's in middle school now, starting 6th grade, and there's a track club nearby. He's like, Dad, I think I want to join the track club. My teacher said I'm fast in gym class. So I do it. Will you help me? Help me write workouts and stuff? And I'm like, yeah. And I was just honored that he thought enough of me. Because I'm his dad
Your
still.
dad, yeah. You're
so
not
he
cool.
asked me.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'd help you.
Yeah.
And that touched my heart.
That's awesome. Well, and it probably is even stronger for him because you let him gravitate towards
Right.
track. Not, hey, come to the track and go to
No,
track. Let's go to
yeah.
track. We're gonna do track, buddy.
Right.
Like it's his own decision. He's gonna own it now.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
That's
We'll
so
see.
cool.
Yeah.
And you're a huge. I shouldn't say huge. You appear to be. Facebook shows what you want to show, right? Star Wars and
Big.
things like that.
That's my thing. Like there's those cups up there.
Oh,
But
yeah.
My daughter is named Leia after Princess Leia.
No.
Yeah, like so.
That's
I want to name
awesome.
her Angela. Malcolm is named after Malcolm X.
Yeah. Okay.
And my daughter, I want to name her Angela after Angela Davis, a civil rights activist,
Okay.
intelligent, brilliant woman. My wife said no.
Wow.
So I was vetoed. So
and she holds the
yeah.
veto key. I
So
get it.
we came up with some other names, and Leia was one of the on the approved list. So we named her Leia after
I'm glad it's just not me and my wife
No.
that had the approved
No,
list and,
so-
and vetoes.
yeah, she's named after Princess Leia or General Leia, however you want to look
That's
at it.
so cool.
And I feel like that's a strong name. So
Yeah, we did. So we went to Disney World this year and got to go to the Disney World. He built his own droid
Yes,
and all that.
yes.
And then over what I call the Christmas break, you have a Christmas break because you're in school.
Right.
I don't have Christmas breaks, but I still call it a Christmas
Right.
break. We watched because we got Disney Plus, so we watched all 8 of the Star Wars that they had, all back to back in order of
release.
not release.
Oh, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, so Jar Jar Binks and stuff first, and then then my era of Star Wars, and now the new era, which I don't get the new era very well, but it was neat to see all 8 films in order. So you see the development of Anakin from a baby to you know who he is and stuff. Spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen it. But for my son to watch it and like was super interested, and you know, I was like, oh, so that becomes Darth Vader. And so it was interesting watching, you know, especially the ones around my era, the, you know, Return of the Jedi and stuff through his eyes, because like when we found out Darth Vader was Luke's dad, like he already knew it because of the way the story, and I was like, man, that was a big deal when I was your age.
Exactly.
Like everybody just lost their stuff when we learned that.
Yeah,
so.
His favorite ones are Return of the Jedi and Attack of the Clones.
I think Attack of the Clones is probably his favorite too. It's fun. The last scene is amazing. So hey, Kebba, man, I can't say thank you enough. It's awesome. You know, the mentors that you have are some of my same mentors, so it's cool to see. And what's even cooler to see is how the progression of your career and how you are now that person. Like I'm going to interview other coaches and they're going to say, yeah, you know who I reached out to, Kebba Tolbert, and he emailed me back. I guarantee it.
That's crazy. Isn't it?
You know, it's awesome, man. It's a legacy that they have put in from their side of you know, the Telezes and Pavs and stuff, and now you move on to that legacy, and even more importantly, the legacy of, you know, fatherhood with Malcolm and Leah. I love that name. So promise me that we'll do a part 2.
Yeah,
because
I'd love
we didn't
to.
even get through your full career.
True.
And I love your career.
Thank you.
And again, your you know, outside the track for you is just fascinating. You know, the Bronx and now living in Boston. It's just amazing.
Go Yankees.
Man. Go Yankees. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Cool.
Boy, I told you this was one of my all-time favorite interviews. I've done several of these through different mediums, and Kebba continues to shock and awe me in all the right ways of his background, his passion for education, his passion for coaching, his passion for teaching, and we barely got into it. I could have spent 2 more hours with Kebba, and I really hope I do get that opportunity to do that once again and do a part 2 and maybe a part 3 with this this just fascinating individual. Love him to death. By the way, if you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show, please don't hesitate to contact me at hurdle@gilathletics.com. That's right, hurdle@gilathletics.com. .com, of course. And, you know, if you've made it this far and you're still listening, I just really appreciate your time and attention. It means the absolute world to me that you'd spend an hour plus of your time listening to our podcast here. I really hope you enjoyed connecting with Kebba as much as I did. You weren't there, so you couldn't have got as much enjoyment, but let me tell you what, fascinating individual. If you want to get notified when we publish more interviews, we don't do them on a regular schedule. It's as the coaches are available for us and willing to do this. Just subscribe on your podcast app here and you'll be notified every time we push out an interview. It could be once a month. It could be 3 times in one day. And in the meantime, really hope you feel led to share this podcast on your social media network of choice. Kind of spread the love out there and have others enjoy these interviews that we're doing. And join us next time when we once again connect you with another great track and field coach. Bye-bye.